Everyone says Jonah ran because he was scared, but that's not the full story. And this is where things get uncomfortable. The setup is painfully simple. God sends him on a mission. Just one line. Go to Nineveh. No dramatic speech, no giant sign in the sky, just a direct instruction. And Jonah's response, he heads in the opposite direction. Not let me think about it, not give me a moment. He basically speed runs, nope. It's the biblical equivalent of getting an important email. And deciding the best strategy is to delete your entire account. Everyone already knows this first part of the story. The disobedient prophet, the man who runs away, the guy who buys a boat ticket like he's escaping from unpaid parking tickets. But the real question is never the one people ask. It's not, did Jonah run? It's, why? Because from the outside, Jonah doesn't look panicked. He looks determined, focused. Like someone totally sure that running is the smartest move on the table. There's no dramatic pause, no fear monologue, no shaking hands. He just moves. He walks to the port. He buys a ticket. He boards the ship. Honestly, if you watched this as an animated episode, you'd assume he rehearsed the escape plan days earlier. His confidence is suspiciously high for someone allegedly terrified, and that creates a small problem for the "he ran because he was scared" theory. Because nothing about him screams fear. He's not hiding, he's not trembling, he's not begging for protection. He's just leaving. The mission is simple. The instructions are simple. But Jonah's reaction? That's complicated. And this is where the story quietly shifts tone. Because maybe Jonah isn't running from something dangerous. Maybe he's running from something he already understands too well. He knows who gave the command. He knows how missions usually end. He knows this isn't actually about travel logistics. And buried underneath all that, a reason that nobody wants to admit out loud. The kind of reason that makes the story less heroic and way more human. So, before giant storms, dramatic sailors, or a very confused sea creature enter the picture, the narrative leaves us with one nagging, unavoidable question. Jonah didn't just run. He ran instantly, which means the issue wasn't fear, and the answer is much less heroic than you think. Let's get straight to it. Jonah isn't running because he thinks he'll fail. He's running because he's afraid the mission will work. That's the part nobody expects. He's not terrified of disaster. He's terrified of success. And the reason is simple. Nineveh wasn't just a city on a map, it was the enemy, brutal, violent, historically unpleasant in every category where you don't want 5 stars. Sending Jonah there was basically assigning a customer support agent to reconcile with the company that destroyed his entire business. Or, in modern terms, it's like being sent to help the rival who shredded your company and then stole your best employees. Jonah knows exactly how this plays out. He preaches, they listen, everything turns out well, and he has to watch people he despises get a fresh start. And he absolutely does not want to be the guy responsible for that. He's not confused. He's not overwhelmed. He's not emotionally fragile. He just doesn't like the mission. Specifically, he doesn't like the outcome the mission might produce, because Jonah knows something dangerous. If God tells him to warn the enemy, it's because there's a chance, a real chance, that the enemy might change. And Jonah isn't here for that storyline. This is where the dry humor of the situation kicks in. The problem is not the mission. The problem is the mercy. He doesn't want forgiveness to be an option for those people. He doesn't want restoration to be on the menu. He doesn't want to see a headline tomorrow that says, "Former enemies experience spiritual turnaround after reluctant prophet's message." He's not avoiding disaster. He's avoiding compassion. And that makes his escape look completely different. He's not fleeing in weakness. He's fleeing in protest. Jonah is essentially staging a one-man strike. If the mission might actually succeed, I'm not participating. So he runs, fast, far, with the determination of someone who's absolutely sure he's correct about how things should be handled. But here's the quiet twist the story is building toward. Running away doesn't rewrite the assignment. It just delays the moment he has to deal with it. Because in this story, and honestly in most stories where someone tries to outpace a calling, there's one universal truth. Running from the plan doesn't cancel the plan. And Jonah is about to discover that the hard way. Jonah gets on the ship like everything is under control. He buys the ticket, finds his spot, probably thinks, great, running from responsibility accomplished. And then the weather immediately disagrees. A storm hits so fast it feels personal. Waves start folding over the boat. The crew panics. Supplies fly. People scream in 3 different languages. Meanwhile, Jonah? He's unusually calm for a man actively causing meteorological chaos. It's a textbook example of something very modern. It's like ignoring a small problem, until it becomes a full-blown public crisis. Everyone on board is trying to survive. Everyone except the one guy who already knows the root cause. Jonah is basically the person who caused the fire, and is now sitting quietly, waiting for someone else to notice the smoke. He doesn't admit anything right away. He hesitates. He stalls. He lets the panic simmer long enough for the sailors to question every life choice they've ever made. And then comes the observational truth of the whole situation. Sometimes the chaos around you is just the side effect of the chaos you're running from. Eventually, Jonah owns up. He's the problem. He's the reason the ship looks like it's auditioning for a disaster movie. The crew doesn't love the solution he proposes. Throw me overboard is not exactly a traditional conflict management strategy, but the storm leaves them with limited options. Over he goes. The sea calms instantly. Crisis solved. Sailors relieved. Jonah sinking. And this is where the story usually zooms in on the headline moment, the giant fish, the miracle rescue, the dramatic illustration every kid's book refuses to skip. But in this version, the fish is not the highlight. The fish is the pause. 3 days, 3 nights, 3 full cycles of isolation with nothing to do except confront the decision that got him swallowed in the first place. It's forced reflection, the spiritual equivalent of airplane mode. And despite the movie-worthy setup, Jonah doesn't walk out of this experience as a brand new man. No glowing transformation, no instant wisdom, no dramatic vows to change his ways forever. Because the story is hinting at something very human. Even a 3-day timeout inside a sea creature doesn't guarantee a personality shift. After the storm, the fish, and the 3-day timeout, Jonah finally heads to Nineveh. No dramatic entrance, no inspiring music. Just a man who clearly does not want to be there. His message, short, dry. Delivered with the enthusiasm of someone reading the terms and conditions out loud. No hand gestures, no charisma, no epic prophet energy. Just 40 days, or else. And then, something impossible happens. People listen, not just 1 or 2, the entire city, from regular folks to leaders. Everyone suddenly decides, yep, time to change everything. It's the biblical equivalent of doing the worst presentation of your life, and it still goes viral. Jonah should be thrilled. Any other prophet would be trending on every platform by now. But Jonah, he's furious. He sits there watching the city respond, exactly the outcome he feared, and he hates it. Humor in its driest form, the one time a prophet gets a perfect success rate, he treats it like a personal insult. And here's the irony dripping off the scene. The messenger of God is angry because God was merciful. This is the narrative twist nobody expects. Everyone focuses on the fish, the storm, the running. But this is the moment the story shows its real point. Jonah isn't upset because his message failed. He's upset because it worked. He wanted justice. He got mercy. And he cannot stand watching his enemies receive the very thing he relies on himself. This is the part of the story where the viewer realizes Jonah wasn't wrestling with fear. He was wrestling with fairness, or at least his version of fairness. And as he sits there, annoyed at a city full of people turning their lives around, the story pulls all the threads together and reveals what the entire chase has been about from the beginning. This, right here, is the real reason he ran. Jonah didn't run because he was a coward. He ran because he disagreed. He knew exactly who God was. He knew forgiveness was always on the table. And the one thing he absolutely didn't want was for Nineveh to end up on the receiving end of that forgiveness. That's the uncomfortable truth sitting behind the entire story. Jonah wasn't afraid failure might happen. He was afraid success might happen. So the narrative rolls back everything we've seen so far, laying it out like a highlight reel. Mission received. Escape fully intentional. Storm triggered. fish-assisted pause, unexpected success, final frustration. Every moment fits into a single, very human pattern. And then the story does something unusual. It refuses to wrap everything in a neat bow. There's no Jonah learned his lesson ending. No sentimental conclusion, no final speech. Instead, it ends with a question hanging in the air, one that quietly turns the camera toward the viewer. What do you do when mercy lands where you didn't want it to? Because the whole situation is basically this. It's like discovering the problem was never the task. It was your heart reacting to the task. Jonah becomes a mirror more than a character. He represents that deeply human instinct we don't like to admit. We want justice. But we really want justice for people who hurt us. And mercy, that's harder to watch, especially when it shows up for the wrong people. The irony is that Jonah relies on the same mercy he's angry about. He needs it, he expects it, but he can't tolerate seeing it given away freely. And that is why his story doesn't end with a celebration, but with a moment of tension, because Jonah isn't running from danger or failure or even responsibility. He's running from what the mission reveals about him. He ran because mercy was bigger than his comfort zone. He ran because compassion was aimed at people he couldn't stand. He ran because the story didn't match the ending he wanted. He ran, but not from the mission. He ran from what the mission exposed. Which misunderstood Bible story should I simplify next? David, Samson, Job?